Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore the journey of the fleet-footed Mercury through the earthy, sensuous sign of Taurus. This begins on May the 15th and goes on for 19 days through to the 3rd of June. Mercury's about talk and thought. It's how we articulate our ideas, can be about discussion. The sign of Taurus can be about possessions, also the things we enjoy in life, the things we can consume, but also everyday money. But it can also see us thinking about our self-worth, our values. But it also brings the 5 players in total, including the ruler of Venus, the erratic Uranus, the fortunate Jupiter, and the Sun, all cresting in the sign of Taurus. And that's really exciting. I'm going to share with you some of the themes of Mercury through Taurus, but most of all, we need to be mindful of the event chart. When any event occurs, that provides a backdrop for the entirety of the period we're talking about. And as Mercury moves into Taurus, it clashes with the mighty Pluto. What does that mean? Also, through the rest of May, Mercury is going to be forging 2 very influential influences, which I'll share with you. If you're new to my channel, it's great to have your company. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. I've been sharing about how 45% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. If that's you, please help to grow the channel and click that subscription button now, as well as the bell notification symbol. Every time I drop a video, you will get an alert. I'm also a consulting astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one, please check out my testimonials below. I don't edit these as they come in. And also, if you'd like your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, please click the link beneath this video or go to www.patrickarundell.com/subscribe. And finally, if you would like to grow your astrological journey, if you know your tropical astrology, why not check out my draconic charts? These will give you searing insights into your karmic and soul journey through this lifetime. If you're yet to engage with your tropical or natal astrology, you can get 30% off and get your life roadmap report, which helps you to get a much more intimate understanding of who you are, but also your 12 months transits, the moving planets in the sky interacting with your unique blueprint. Please see below for more information on both. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart for the 15th of May at 5:06 p.m. Universal. Why do I choose Universal? Well, it's because Greenwich is where the primary meridian is. So I feel we can all collectively relate to this. I've not used Placidus. I've used 0 degrees Aries, the vernal point, as the start point for the ascendant. That means that we can collectively relate to this chart. It means Mercury moves into Taurus, but also house 2. So let's just think about house 2. You can see that Venus, the ruler, is there at 19 degrees. So it's just come into the end of the 3rd decan of the sign of Taurus, which is ruled by Mercury. So that's interesting. So we get that double Mercury influence. But we've also got Uranus, the Sun and Jupiter clustered towards the end of the sign. And certainly by Saturday, the 18th, there's going to be a glorious conjunction between the Sun and Jupiter, a cazimi, which is really a reward for all the hard work we've been putting in over the last year. If we've been trying to work with our resources, squeeze a bit more out of them, be as practical as possible. But Mercury comes in to add its support, essentially. What's not to like? Well, it's just that by the 17th of May, in 2 days' time, Mercury comes into a direct right angle, a 90-degree tense, brittle right angle with Pluto. But that aspect shows right from its arrival in the sign of Taurus. And you can see that, interestingly, the part of fortune is with Pluto up in Aquarius. So that's House 11. House 11 is our collective interaction, our network, our future hopes. It can be where we're being more progressive. It could be where we need to be mindful of our direction in life. The sign of Taurus can get caught up, not just with marshalling and managing money and resources, but because of that Venusian rulership and Venus being back in the sign, it can also be about enjoying good things as well. So at the moment, particularly with the Sun inching towards that conjunction with Jupiter, the desire to splash out or to consume anything which has a little bit of luxury or we find very, very hard to resist would hardly be a surprise. So Pluto squaring with Mercury at a very practical level is saying to us, whatever decisions we make now in terms of our thinking, Mercury, or our discussions, Mercury, our planning, Mercury, we need to be mindful of how this will play out future forwards. So if we're thinking of doing something much more spontaneously, and Jupiter is obviously the planet of spontaneity, and Venus and Jupiter, the two planets of plenty in Taurus, suggest that getting in touch with those things that we find delectable and irresistible may be part of what we're experiencing at this time. So Mercury in that right angle with Pluto suggests that we could encounter someone who does see the big picture and may want to just alert us to what the potential challenges are. Whether we want to hear their point of view is another matter. One of the things I would say with a Mercury-Pluto aspect, any of them, it does confer the potential for a tremendously shrewd psychological perception, so we can cut through and get to what's really important. The problem is, having Pluto in a square with Mercury suggests that somebody may decide that they're the knowledge about a situation and want to impress their knowledge or their point of view or their opinion or their dogma on us. So we may encounter someone at this time and over the next 19 days who has a kind of might is right attitude. I also want to make you aware of Mars in the sign of Aries. Now Mars in Aries is obviously at home, so it's a great time to initiate things, but that's squaring with the midpoint in the sign of Cancer. What is the midpoint? If we take the position of the Moon, which is in Leo, and also squares with Jupiter, further amping up our desire to splash out, and we take the position of the Sun at 2520 in Taurus, and we measure between them and divide it by 2, that's the balance of the two energies. The Sun is obviously the luminary which lights up our whole lives, the day, the light, but the Moon lights up the night and also our psychology. So the midpoint between the two of them being in Cancer is interesting. So it's an emotional time in some ways, and Mars squaring that midpoint suggests if we are too impatient and impetuous or forceful, which can come with Pluto squaring up with Mercury, if we rush something, particularly around the foundations of our lives, so it could be about a financial decision, or it could be about an emotional decision in terms of someone we're finding to be very, very alluring. So whether it's in romance or finance, it's not the best of times to rush to a decision, even if all those energies in the sign of Taurus, including Uranus being so close to the Sun, is making us really perhaps in the mood to make some kind of quick decision. So if we can just cool things down a little bit, that's going to be a very smart thing to do. Now, it's also the case that on May the 28th, Mercury is going to be in a sextile with Saturn. Comes into a conjunction with Uranus as this month draws to a close and June begins. That's an electric connection. It could see us generate some real light bulb moments when it comes to ideas, particularly innovative ideas. Obviously Uranus can push us to try different things out, but remember Taurus essentially is about stability and it can be resistant to change, and Uranus therefore has been creating a fair amount of turmoil as it's made its way through the sign of Taurus. Taurus likes that continuity, Uranus isn't bothered. It wants to push on regardless of what collateral occurs, and we've seen that in so many ways over the last few years. Please do check out my Uranus Cazimi deep dive video, which explains the big picture of all of this and will help you to understand how you can make the most of Uranus over the next year, because essentially Cazimi is a solar return for that sign. The other thing I'd like to share with you is that Mercury has been moving through the sign of Aries since the 10th of March, and it only has just emerged from its post-retrograde shadow, because obviously it was retrograde from the 1st of April to the 25th on the 13th of May. If there has been something that has been frustratingly held up and has not been moving forwards at quite the pace we want, Mercury darting into the sign of Uranus can give us a sense that we can gain traction. But I do think it's very important to think to the future. Whatever we're trying to do in the here and now, particularly with resources, we need to think, how will this impact, how will this play out down the track, and don't rush it with Mars in that square with the midpoint. So that's the overall emphasis of this. Mercury is about communication, it can be about transport, it can be about distribution, certainly can be about our intellect. Through the sign of Gemini, it can be very sociable, mixing and mingling, and its rulership through Virgo is very discriminating and precise. And Pluto pushes us to draw in that kind of Virgoan energy at the start of this. So there are opportunities here if we just take our time to weigh things up carefully. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon over this next 19 days. And please do check out my charts beneath this video, the special offer. But for now, Aries. So Aries, Mercury moving out of your sign and into Taurus may be actually something you can really appreciate. Since Venus moved into Taurus, I feel there may have been some kind of uptick in your financial situation, but also your sense of security. One of the things with Mercury going through your sign is the fire, the passion of your sign. It means that anything you're really invested in, particularly your ideas, if they have been blocked in some way, that may have been really exasperated. So what we've got now with Mercury moving into Taurus is you can start to see that the delays and perhaps pauses and glitches that may have occurred, now you can start to make sense of it and sort things out into something that has a firmer framework. But it is really important to be conscious of your ruler Mars in that right angle with the midpoint. So if ever there was a time to take into account the emotional perspective, particularly around your financial affairs, it's certainly now. So Taurus, I wouldn't say you've been suffering with anxiety as such, but maybe there have been times over that previous 9.5 weeks, because it was such a long transit through the sign of Aries, that at times you felt a little bit withdrawn or didn't quite have your usual self-confidence around communications. Or perhaps there was a thought that circulated around your mind quite repeatedly that sometimes was a bit difficult to move. The great thing about having Mercury coming into your own sign is it brings you into the present. So some of those things, those shadow subjects, maybe some fears, maybe recollections to do with your past, reminiscences in some ways. There may even have been some kind of connection or communication with someone from your past. But now you come into the moment in quite the way. And you know, the rest of this week particularly can be so exciting for you, particularly if you take a firm grip on what you want to do as an individual. So if you are more of a team player, I think Mercury moving into your own sign is giving you a bit more of a push to show more self-assertion. However, with Pluto and the part of fortune in a square with Mercury, if there is something that's important to you creatively, but you do need to interact with someone in a position of influence, you may just need to be mindful that they have a structure or a way of working that may not quite match what you want to do as an individual. So there may be some bending that might need to be done either way. And if you are determined to do it only your way, that may not see this situation go through. So this is a good time to flex a little bit, but only if it really feels right for you, because I think at the moment you'll need to really stick with what makes you quite uniquely yourself is very strong indeed. So Gemini, Mercury moving into your 12th house is really interesting because it's had such an extended period in the very sociable 11th. Now, of course, through the retrograde and the pre and post shadow periods, there may have been some changes of plan, even changes of alliances. You've probably had a lot of food for thought about some of your connections. Mercury moving into the 12th house can just give you a desire to step back that little bit more, because Mars is still in a very hustle bustle part of your chart and very much still giving you a desire to stay connected. But I feel that there is a nuance to this connection. You want to be connected to people who can receive you. You're sensitive and more emotional or psychological side of yourself in just the right kind of way. So it may be that if you have friends who are particularly interested in spirituality, healing, personal development and growth, those are the type of people that will be much more alluring to you at this time. And it may be some people that are good fun, maybe quite jolly, but don't perhaps have that extra depth that you may need with such a lot of energy in your 12th house, may for the moment just be put a little bit to one side. So a time to pause, a time to dig deeper into your psyche. This has been going on in earnest, to be honest, with Uranus for some years now. It may have been something that's been jagging away at you, demanding your attention, however reluctant you may have been at times. But now actually there can be a period of real growth. You can start to see things in new ways. And one of the great things about 12th house energy, in terms of how we can work with it, we can let go, we can release past hurts and energies that are built up like a sediment within us. So Mercury can help you to think about that, but it's probably going to see you be a little bit less chatty than you have recently, because it's squaring up with Pluto. If there is somebody around you who tends to be the person who likes to always be right, I think that could be a little bit aggravating at the present time. So keep a little bit of distance, focusing on getting some rest, taking some time out, getting into nature, and if you can, even receiving some treatments as well, because that can see you really getting in touch with that whole theme of healing. So Mercury moving into Taurus for you, Cancer, is really exciting. It can be very, very sociable. There's been a lot of thinking, a lot of activity in terms of your connection to the wider world, and it may not have all been a straight line. Job applications, attending interviews, working on your business, a lot of demands. You have a chance now over the next 19 days to enjoy life a little bit more. You've also got a cluster of energy that really reaches a peak by the end of week commencing the 13th, so really by the 19th of May, which is very jolly. And if you do get the chance to meet up and mix with people that you really feel at ease with, that's a wonderful thing to do. Don't be surprised if you're providing some lead in that regard. But Mercury in the 11th house is also going to get you thinking about your long-term future, because Pluto's applying to it. If your long-term future seems to be influenced by finance, as it is for many of us, but in a particularly powerful way, there may be some thinking you need to do around budgets, around maybe some of your expenditure in terms of socialising. And Pluto is quite demanding, and of course, because the midpoint is also squaring with Mars, what you could easily do at this time is stand in your power with Mars in your own assertion and push back against anyone else's viewpoint or perspective. I think the thing to try to achieve at the moment is work in a collaborative way. Try to find points of cooperation. That's going to be really useful to you. You're building up your connections to people who can be very valuable. So the short-term hit between Mercury and Pluto is not something that you really want to knock you off course. So if you get into a little bit of a dispute or a difference of opinion that's not really so much to do with what's important for your future hopes. Maybe it's more to do with the here and now. That actually can deflect you. So be careful and be aware of who just may rankle you at this particular time. It may be that somebody in your friendship circle tends to be a bit of a know-it-all, a bit controlling, and wants in some ways to steer what you want to do. But this is definitely a time when you need to feel a bit freer. You don't mind collaborating, but you do need to feel that you're in touch with that part of you that can grow in a less burdened way, and that's part of Uranus being so close to the Sun at the present time. Your freedom loving credentials are definitely being emphasized just now. Welcome, Leo. If you have been thinking making some changes around your work, your career, or your skill base, Mercury moving onto the 10th house cusp suggests this can be the perfect time to apply for a course, do some on-site training. Maybe there is some more academic knowledge that you need to gain. Because Pluto in the 7th house is accentuating your relationships, if you are wanting to shift your goals and ambitions or your work aspirations in a different direction, and that doesn't quite suit someone you're connected to, could be a parent, could be a sibling, could be a partner, even a friend who knows what's best for you, that can really be something that rankles with Mercury's arrival in Taurus. But the collection of energy you have here at the present time is very, very good for building alliances because of Venus being here, but also your fresh approach. So I feel that Mercury suggests that if you do have a jagged moment where someone wants to let you know that who they are, you know, how masterful they are, I'd just take a breath and try to get beyond it, because with Mars in your 9th house, your desire to be very, very dynamic and expand your horizons is very, very strong. So somehow or another, something big is shifting in terms of your responsibilities, obligations, goals, ambitions, work. And it's really exciting. Mercury's going to help this process. Something you've been planning or learning about for about 2 months can really now come into play in a much more important way for you. So Virgo, of course, Mercury is also your ruler, but moving here, the 9th house, this is terrific because it's very much in keeping with the concept of travel, widening your horizons, being much more adventurous. Uranus has been pushing you to do this over the last few years. You've also got Jupiter, very much to do with travel, and Venus in the 9th house. And they're giving you an appreciation of different cultural interactions. So if you are going to be expanding your situation over the next few weeks, you really are set fair. What's not to like? Well, it could be something within you, because Pluto in its retrograde in your 6th house is asking you to think, look, is my everyday structure as good as I think it is? I might stand it up and say, oh no, I'm absolutely fine in what I'm doing, or my job or whatever, when there's this absolute pack of energy really provoking excitement and at the thought of shaking things up. So if you're trying to persuade yourself that the status quo works for you, when the reality could be that if you do take that step outside your comfort zone, it could be exhilarating. If that's how you're reacting, it could be someone close to you may see it as well and point it out. And that could be something you don't find terribly easy. Who would? But it's because they can see there are so many opportunities for you if you could let go of the need for a rather metronomic, very regulated, everyday structure. So, Libra, Mercury's been moving backwards and forwards through your sector of relating since the 10th of March. It's given you a lot of conversations, perhaps some food for thought. The thing with Mercury in the 7th house, particularly in the retrograde, is yes, you can have the dialogue, but what did it actually mean? Mercury going into your 8th house asks you to don your detective's hat and really think, look, people are saying, or a person said these things, what really is their motive? You need to decode what that motive is. Pluto, the planet which is very much to do with decoding things and really helping us to understand people's true motivations, can help you in its square with Mercury, but it's also possible that if someone isn't as available to you or isn't as committed to you as you would like, the reality of that can become much more obvious. And that could be obviously very disappointing, because this cluster of energy in the 8th house is very much to do with desire, but it's also to do with change, evolution, transformation. And because your ruler Venus and Jupiter are in the 8th house, you could have some real fortune around business and in some ways shared resources. If you're someone who is seeing someone at the present time, or you're married, it could be your partner who's going to have some kind of breakthrough and you can benefit from that. But if you're trying to get somebody to know somebody new and get to a much more invested, almost devoted type of relationship, you're going to reach a little bit of a pinch point to find out whether it is on or not. So try to stay cool, but at the same time, don't be browbeaten by somebody's evasiveness. I think it's important that you do really know where you stand. Now, Scorpio, Mercury moving through the 6th house and in that retrograde has probably made you feel quite tense at times. It's a very brittle influence, and with that brittleness we can have moments where maybe we're a bit irritable or maybe a bit snappy. So Mercury moving into the 7th house, the great outcome from that is we can be a bit more dispassionate. People see things in a different way. It's okay, that's your viewpoint. We're not going to react to it. We're not going to be triggered by it so easily. You've also got Venus, the planet of equilibrium, in your 7th house, Jupiter, the planet of fortune. But of course, Uranus is there as well. So there probably has been a lot of ups and downs in recent years around your relationships. Some getting into ties suddenly, some breaking away from ties suddenly. But with your modern ruler Pluto in that square to Mercury, there may be some very important emotional strands within your situation that you just can't put to one side. So if there is something where someone's not really being very collaborative, or perhaps you're not being as collaborative as you might be, Pluto suggests this does need to be met head on. And if you try to avoid it, smooth things over, try to be a little bit maybe superficial, someone won't have it. They're bringing you back to the issue that they may be finding awkward. So as I said, it could be you that's going to be that sentry. It may be somebody else outside of you. But Mercury moving through your 7th house is really positive over the whole in terms of trying to find accord. So even if there has been some kind of falling out and you need to sort of reset, you can do so hopefully by hearing what each of us say more clearly. Sagittarius, Mercury moving through your 6th house, has probably given you some splendid social moments over the last 9.5 weeks. It's now saying to you, right, you've had your fun, you need to concentrate on the essentials. How very generous of it. Doesn't sound very sexy, does it? And because Mercury's squaring with Pluto, 3-6, you could feel quite tense as this transition takes place. But look at Jupiter, your ruler, because the Sun's going to meet Jupiter by the 18th, and that can see a breakthrough, particularly around your work, your health. Something that has been very chaotic in recent years can start to make sense. It's just as Mercury moves into the sign of Taurus, it may feel that you've got more to contend with, more demands, more irritations, but stick with it. Your dedication and devotion in recent years, if you've really rolled up your sleeves, it is about to be rewarded. So Capricorn, Mercury moving into your 5th house is lovely. It's been in the 4th house for so long, 9.5 weeks, which can be very inward. The 4th house is essentially very soggy. It may have been hosted in the sign of Aries, which can be impetuous, but for you, the 4th house means that your emotional dimension has probably consumed some of your thinking, Mercury. So Mercury moving into the 5th house sees your natural sense of humour spark into life. And how so? It's just that Mercury square with Pluto can also see you a little bit more single-minded about what you want to do with your finances, particularly if there's something that's you're finding very alluring in terms of investment. Perhaps something's exciting you in terms of speculation, but if you're closely involved with someone else, they may not get the same buzz. But The fifth house energy that's all manifesting in your time at the moment brings three words up for you, Taurus. Fun, fun, fun. Take the opportunity to have some fun before, particularly the start of week commencing the 20th, because, and remember, by the 23rd we are also going to have a glorious link between Venus and Jupiter, which can be fortunate. So whether it's around your romantic situation, whether it's about being playful with your friends in a social setting, whether it's, if you have kids, enjoying spending time with them and watching their pursuits, or it is demonstrating your creativity, make sure you enjoy it, because I feel that Mercury going through your fourth house has made you a little bit inward at times, despite the fact that other planetary influences have been urging you on. So a chance now to step out and step in to the sunshine. Now Aquarius, because Mercury moves forwards into your fourth house, this is very much to do with home, family, emotion. So anything to do with a property matter, contractors coming into your abode to make some changes. It could be that that you're thinking about where you live, or perhaps amending where you live, even decorating it, or perhaps some new furnishings. There's possibly set to be a family reunion, particularly by the 23rd of May, which is really, really delightful, as Venus and Jupiter in your fourth house come into an exact conjunction. But it's also the chance that, with Uranus being such a very disruptive influence over the last years around those very areas, you can start to make sense of it now. It's just that Mercury squaring Pluto means that if someone close to you, perhaps a family member, is not, in your view, being very straightforward about something, because the fourth house can be a bit avoiding. It's very Cancerian. Of course, Uranus is there, which is at times been very disruptive, but having Venus, Jupiter, the Sun, and now Mercury all in the fourth house, it can be a tendency to avoid something, or to try to keep something exactly as it is, when really you should be trying to evolve your situation in a powerful way with Pluto's help. I feel that's what the heavens are saying. So there could be a bit of a push and pull between your need for stability and the need to change, but I think generally the stability and the core of your situation is actually looking really promising, and hopefully that square between Mercury and Pluto won't dominate this particular 19-day period too much for us Aquarians. So Pisces, Mercury moving into this location is really great, because if you've been doing a lot of discussion around a financial matter or something to do with the foundations in your world, and it's like dragged on and it hasn't really been getting to where you want it to be, maybe your income has slowed down, people haven't been paying you on time, you've been waiting for some kind of insurance payout, all that kind of stuff, Mercury sweeping into your third house can definitely see things speed up. And there can be some wonderful communication over the next week particularly. Just making you aware that Pluto squaring with Mercury suggests that something could come out into the open over the next 19 days, which may be a little bit painful. It could be related to a past relationship, a past thought, a past fear that's manifested itself deep within you. You could have a conversation about it, but it does give you the chance to then release it. If you are involved in writing, publishing, technology, this can be an extremely positive period for you over the next week. But just watch out for someone who's just lingering in the background of your situation, who may be observing what you're doing, but may not actually be a particular ally, and they could be prepared to seize on something. So I would keep your cards very close to your chest when you're just having ordinary chit chat with people, because you could easily let something slip with Mercury in the third house that's best kept very much stumm. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Please do check out that Uranus Cazimi special deep dive video, because that provides a perspective of what's been going on in Taurus for some years, full time since 2019, and what we can expect over the next year. Please see the link within this video. For now, take care. Have a great Mercury transition through Taurus, and goodbye for now.